It's over 200 years since the first white settlers arrived on Norfolk Island. In fact, they came all the way out here just weeks after founding Sydney in 1788.
I hereby claim this island in the name of King George III, his heirs and successors. Governor Phillip! Governor Phillip! Governor Phillip!
So why, just a few weeks after the establishment of Sydney itself, would a handful of soldiers and convicts be sent to remote Norfolk Island? Politics, of course. There were always rumours about the French, but there were other good reasons. Norfolk Pines. It seems remarkable that tiny Norfolk should be the home of these unique giants. Most graceful when young, they change as they mature, but they keep their symmetry defying howling, salt-laden coastal winds. Captain Cook had been the first to see them and thought they'd make a perfect timber for ships' masts. The expedition of 1788 was sent to find out if Cook was right, but he was wrong. From the outside, they seem okay, but the big old trees can be rotten inside. No good for the masts of men of war. Mind you, in the worst of the convict days, one of these tree hollows really came into its own. And escaped convict Barney Duffy made good use of the Norfolk pine. Living in a hollowed out tree like this one, he was able to evade capture, would you believe, for 7 years? These days, Norfolk pine is selectively cut for local use only. And even the knots, more like carving stone than wood, are turned into beautiful craft objects. Without wood for ships' masts, the expedition of 1788 should have been a failure, and would have been, but for one thing: the Norfolk soil. Norfolk's a natural hothouse, semi-tropical, even temperatures, even rainfall, and no frost. Things almost seem to grow before your eyes, making Norfolk a Garden of Eden. So deep and rich and fertile is Norfolk's soil that in the first hungry years of white settlement in Australia, it was food from this remote island that kept Sydney from starving. In fact, the great attraction of Norfolk even in convict days was that the island was always able to feed itself. The buildings are not the only relics of convict days. These lovely Moreton Bay figs were planted in the 1830s, when this was part of a farm which grew enough produce to feed over 2,000 convicts. But man does not live by bread alone. By the 1830s, human imagination had managed to take this paradise of an island and turn it into a vision of hell.
Ah, here on your left is the crank mill. Now, don't believe for a moment that this was only to grind meal for the settlement. The corn and maize was usually ground up at the watermill. Oh, no. This crank mill was erected for the purpose of punishment for the poor devils in irons.
Under His Majesty's pleasure, Norfolk Island became a new kind of jail, a terror prison. Not meant to reform men, but to break them.
That gives us rest.
This is a reenactment, of course. part of an unusual show acted out in the ruins of Kingston. But the horror was real, and it happened here.
It is one of my duties to keep stock of the tools that the convicts use in the fields and for cutting stone. Of course, some of them will attempt to chisel through their leg irons during the day while they are out working. The guards will check the irons on each man wearing them, and if there has been any attempt to cut through, then that convict will be flogged.
92.
For 30 terrible years the lash was law, given not in dozens but hundreds at a time. One man during his stay received over 3,000 lashes, and that wasn't unusual.
100.
What became of prisoners on Norfolk no longer mattered, so long as enough horror stories leaked out to stop anyone else breaking the law.